Hello, my name is Webb, and I'm speaking as an advocate for citizens. I've made a few videos, but this is the first one in quite a long time. What I want to talk about today is the issue of the law and medicine. Um, but more specifically, issues that I'm going to address are the COVID vaccine, the 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 abortion issue in the United States and other countries, but the United States is playing out, and the anti-trans uh, legislation uh, that's appearing in both Canada, probably other countries and the United States as well. And I put these all under one category, and the category is that here are cases where there's a lot of medical information, and there's sometimes controversial aspects of these, which has always been the case with medical things. When new things come up, there's always some work in working out about the bugs and also trying to get acceptance of something which was not accepted very well. And and but if we're lucky, the dialogue, the information growing, the knowledge spreading will be among informed people, which is people in the field of medicine and in the field and in the areas of personal care, parents and so on, who are worried about the people upon whom medicine is going to be practiced. And if we typically in the past, if we've allowed the doctors, the hospitals, and the caregivers, which could be of children or of older people, uh, to be involved in the discussions and dealing with the moral issues, we eventually come up with a better understanding and a better solution. That the government should be stepping in and trying to decide on behalf of people based on their political beliefs what the doctors shouldn't be allowed to do is a horrible travesty of care for human people. So let's start with something which is kind of obvious: abortion. In the United States, there's been a long battle for women to be able to have the right to have an abortion. Now, there's a moral issue. Some people feel that an abortion represents the death of a person, taking a person to be anything that's alive as human, not like a toenail, but I mean as as a fetus that could develop into an adult at some point. And so the idea that aborting a fetus would be the equivalent of death, of murder, is understandable. But for the most part, that's not how people look at it, because when you look at it, sometimes people accept the idea that even though we're kind of against abortion, they're not against being able to have an abortion when it would save the life of a mother. They're not against having an abortion when the person forced to carry the baby would be someone who's being the victim of incest or rape and so on. So at a high moral level, I think most people accept the idea that, yes, it's alive, but it's not the same as a person. And that's kind of where I stand, is that I think that um, a fetus is not a person. A fetus is not a baby. And of course, there have been some medical issues, but I don't want to get into the medical issues because my point is, it's not up to the lawyers or the lawmakers to decide what the medical issues are. Let's let the medical people decide what that is. So in the States, of course, the big push was on to try for the religious Protestants and Catholics to some extent to win over the day and to make abortion illegal, except in some very difficult circumstances, and in some places, even in spite of very difficult circumstances, to make it illegal. Of course, we should remember that, as I do, because I'm in my 70s, that making abortion illegal does not stop abortion. What it does is it forces people with lots of money to sort of go behind the scenes and get a safe abortion for the people they care about, and people without lots of money to subject themselves to the risk of having someone who's not qualified help them with the abortion and causing a lot of horrible, horrible tragedies, including death and the permanent negating of a person's ability to have children in the future. So it's not a matter of whether it's going to be there or not, it's a matter of whether it's going to be legal or not. So in my view, this is an issue where there is no good reason for the law to determine whether a doctor can perform an abortion on a woman. It should be up to the woman herself and the doctor. And there are enough people in our society who believe that it's not a murder. It's not a murder of a person like it's murdering your 1-year-old. It's definitely different. And they have as much right to the law representing their view as someone who thinks, as a born-again Christian, that no, this is murder. So when there are people with different opinions about what things are, the law shouldn't just take the side of one over the other. You know, we live in a society where we have laws to protect us all, and we need to be able to protect people who have a fairly widely held view of what's right and what's wrong. So I think that it's not fair to have the lawmakers tell women who don't believe that it's murder that they can't have an abortion because other people think it is, even though when you get right down to it, it's not. One thing, just on this side, I didn't want to get into the medical thing, but one thing I thought is worth considering is that I learned years ago that, in fact, a very large number of fetuses, of eggs, get fertilized, and you have a fetus that exists for maybe a day or a very short period of time, and doesn't take, and the person never thinks they're ever pregnant. But if you believe that, you know, two cells joining to make, you know, a human cell is a person, then we have every month, every day, millions and millions of people, if you call that a person, who lose their lives because it simply doesn't catch. It's like a very large number. Okay. Related to the abortion issue is the issue of trans rights. So there are quite a large number of people who think that this is a moral issue. People shouldn't be fooling around and changing their gender. There's quite a large number of people who think, and I think they're probably right, is that some young people who are somewhat immature are inclined to think that it would be cool to be transgender, you know? And I think that there's, beyond the number of people who in fact have genetic problems that are transgender, there are some who just want to be and declare themselves to be and would like to be, and so they're jumping on a bandwagon and they're getting medical help to be able to change their gender, sometimes including surgery, sometimes including medications that will affect their maturing as a particular gender. But on the other hand, there are many cases of people who need to have gender-affirming care. For example, you know, if someone starts going to puberty at a very young age, I understand this is a relatively common thing now, though I don't know for sure, where maybe a 7-year-old is going into puberty. And so the parents go to the doctor, and the doctor says, okay, well, we can give them a puberty blocker, and that will help them, you know, have a normal childhood until they reach a more appropriate age for puberty. The anti-trans laws prevent this. So, but in the end, it really isn't up to the government to decide what the person's situation is. Whether a person really is trans, has a need for transgender surgery because they are in fundamental ways in the wrong gender, they were born with the wrong genes, or not, is up to experts. And we may not always trust experts, but experts are far better than politicians in trying to figure out what the rightness and wrongness of a particular situation is. Once again, we expect doctors to take years and years of training. They're experts. For the most part, they seem to act with people's goodwill. Health is their concern, and parents, certainly those caregivers, of young children, do care, and they would like to be involved in helping make the decision as to whether something should go on that's as life-changing as gender-affecting surgery. And I think that, or gender-affecting processes, and I think there's no reason for this particular part of medicine to be taken out of the hands of the best judgment of doctors and people involved. This has become a political issue. There's a lot of people who, and I have friends that believe, oh, well, people make this decision too quickly, we shouldn't allow them. But they don't take into account the number of people who actually do need help, like the 7-year-old who needs a puberty blocker, or the many other more extreme medical things in which I'm not an expert and nor are the politicians to decide whether it's appropriate or not to engage in some transgender processes. Third one, the issue of vaccines. It's become really controversial, and and I at one point thought, oh no, vaccines are very important, and if I'm in a situation where my accepting getting infected with some disease could cause irreparable harm to everyone around me, I shouldn't be able to do that, at least out in public. So I was kind of in favor of the idea of, well, we should have a vaccine mandate because we don't want to risk the lives of other people around those. And I still believe that. But I'm not so sure that it should be a legal issue. Yeah, I am a believer in vaccines in the sense that, like this last week, I had a pneumonia vaccine and I had a flu shot. These are traditional vaccines that work in a certain way that's been around for decades. The process of vaccine, where the idea is that you would get a small dose of something that your body would not harm your body, and your body would then recognize it and mount a defense when you get the real problem. However, mRNA vaccines, as I have understood it, is a whole different matter. So there are problems with mRNA vaccines that are complicated from a medical point of view. I've heard medical arguments and I believe them, but I'm not here to say what those arguments are. It's just I believe them. But it falls into the category of who should decide whether they are involved in a medical procedure. The person themselves, the caregiver of the person themselves, and their doctor, who has had lots of training and understanding of this and understands individual situations, or the government. And I don't think the lawmakers should be in a position when it comes to something where there's any controversy at all, which is pretty well anything where the government's deciding what should be medically available and not, versus the doctor and the person. I think it should be up to the person and the person's doctor as to whether they have to be exposed to this kind of medical treatment, or in the case of abortion, why they can't be exposed to this kind of medical treatment. I don't think it's up to the government. And so this is really the point of this talk. The talk is to make the case for we do not gain from having politicians getting involved in making medical decisions. This is up to individuals, and it's up to their doctors, who are far more expert in assessing their situation. And as long as we have that, we will be likely to be the huge beneficiary of growing concerns. So if something's wrong with, say, the vaccines, which many people think, over time, if the government's not putting its thumb on the scale to say, oh, you must take it, it will come out. The truth will come out, and the truth is coming out with respect to the impact of mRNA vaccines. And when it comes to issues of abortion, this idea that we're going to be able to stop it because we're going to make it illegal is totally wrong. And so my belief is more strong than ever that it's really not up to the government to decide what is medically appropriate and not. Thank you for listening.